Hey guys, Sarah here. I'm back with my N64 collection video. I just want to apologise, there is a fan running in the background. I'm sorry if it's noisy. It's kind of warm in this room. So, just like the GameCube video, the aim of this video is to mainly just document where my N64 collection was at this point in time, and sort of what my goals are for the collection, and what I like about it, what I don't like about it, all those sorts of things. So I figured we'd start off with the console. So my N64 collection is reasonably sort of recent. I didn't really start it until 2019, before the pandemic hit here in Australia. It was early 2019. So my console, actually, I'm really lucky. It's a smoke grey console. I only have it loose. I got really lucky. I got this off a guy on Facebook Marketplace for 20 bucks, believe it or not, which was practically unheard of. It's one of the more expensive consoles that you can buy in Australia. This and the Watermelon, they're pretty expensive. At the time, he sent me a picture through Facebook, and I thought it was an atomic purple, and I was happy to pay up for it. We didn't know whether it worked, and it only came with the power cable. It didn't come with anything else. So I offered him, said, look, I'd be happy to pay up for it, but what do you want? And he just said 20 bucks. And I said, oh no, I'll pay you 50 bucks. Because at the time the atomic purple was worth, I think, 70 to 80. And I went under a little bit because I didn't know if it was going to work, and I had to buy a controller and everything. And he goes, no, 20 bucks. And I asked him 2 or 3 times, and he was adamant. I'd bought other things off him, so I get there, it turns out it's a smoke console, which at the time I didn't realise the significance of it because I'd only sort of just started collecting, and I didn't grow up with an N64. I was around, but I was a little young. And when I got home, I did a little bit of research. I was absolutely blown away. I offered him more money again, and he just didn't want to. I was also really lucky that it came with an expansion pack, which again is worth $60 to $70 Australian. Even loose like this. So this was a massive score, and I'm really lucky. I wouldn't mind trading it for a different colour, but you know, for now I'm happy with it. As cool as the smoke grey is, I don't have a desire to collect all the colours, so I wouldn't mind trading it for the orange, which is my favourite colour, or maybe the pink. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I did pick up after the fact a system manual. I don't know whether the manuals were different for different colours. This is an Australian console manual, whereas I believe I don't know that the smoke ever came out in Australia. I think it was a European colour. I might be wrong there, but yeah, I mean, I don't really mind, but I just picked it up for a few bucks. I like having this sort of stuff, even though I don't have the console boxed. I think it's nice to have. It's a good thing to refer to, cool to see, you know, what problems there might have been, because there's troubleshooting pages and stuff like that in here, which is great to have. I also, after the fact as well, picked up a expansion pack manual just because I wanted to have it, and this one is super minty. There's like no creases in it, there's not even any like wear on it, so it was kind of just for me to have. I also have the Consumer Information and Precautions booklet. I don't know whether this came in the games or whether it came with the console in the box again, but it's kind of cool just to have. I like to just have stuff like that. So moving along, we'll go with controllers. So the first controller I got for it was a Brawler 64, a Watermelon one. So this was before they had wireless brawlers, but I really like this controller. It's easy to use, seemed to have pretty good like input times. I don't experience too much lag. It's nice and comfortable. It is pretty light, so you can tell there's not, you know, a ton going on, but that's okay. And I like that they have all the colours to sort of go with the colours the N64s were. One time there was a lady advertising on Facebook Marketplace close to me. She had a couple of odds and ends from her kids' when they had N64s and GameCubes and stuff. And she didn't have any consoles or anything like that, but she just had a few leftover pieces, I guess. And a couple of those were 2 N64 controllers. So a plain grey one, which I have replaced the stick on. I replaced it with a GameCube stick, which is okay. I don't love it. I'm not really quite sure why, but it does mean that I have, at the time, it was a second controller if anybody wanted to play with me. And she also had a blue controller, which needs a new stick. I haven't replaced the stick on. I'd like to learn how to like fix the gears internally without having to replace the stick, which doesn't seem like it's too hard to do, but I just haven't taken the time to do that yet. But yeah, I think I paid like, I don't know, must have been $10 a controller or something. It was pretty damn cheap. And then eventually I decided that I wanted a matching controller, so that's what I did. I bought a smoke grey controller. The controller alone cost me $100. I think I paid $110 by the time I paid for shipping. I bought it off a guy that I bought a few things off of on Facebook. Yeah, this didn't need a stick replacing or anything like that, which is good. It's got a tiny bit of wobble, but it's pretty good. It's playable, so it meant that I had 3 controllers if anybody wanted to play multiplayer. And it's nice to have a matching one, so if I ever sell the console. But obviously I really paid up for the controller, so that sort of diminishes how little I paid for the console, but I still think it's a fantastic deal. And overall, even if you put this together with this, $130 for both is still a massive steal. So, because I've seen some of these consoles now selling for up to, I think they're listed for $300 or $400. I don't know if they've been selling, but this one's in really nice condition. There's no cracks anywhere. It's still got its original serial number, which is really cool. So, yeah. Moving on to other accessories. I have just a humble rumble pack. I wanted one just because I wanted one. I was amazed to see the first time I pulled it apart and cleaned it, how weak the rumble is. But, you know, back in the day, this was pretty cool technology. And it's amazing how large it is too, especially when you put it inside a controller. You know, it sticks out a lot, which is totally okay. So, but it's still a cool accessory, and I think at the time it must have been mind-blowing to experience this. I also have a controller pack, which is basically a memory card. You didn't have to use these with all games, but you could if you wanted to. It doesn't have a sticker on the front, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's just standard. I also have, to go with my copy of Pokemon Stadium, I have a transfer pack. So if you don't know what these were used for, you could put your Game Boy game there in the top, Pokemon. So Pokemon Yellow, Blue or Red, and this would go in your controller and it would connect to Pokemon Stadium. You could transfer data and Pokemon through it, which was pretty dang cool. This I also bought off the lady that I bought the controllers, and I think I bought this in sort of a lot, but again, pretty cheap, which was pretty cool. Moving along, boxed games. I have 3 boxed games. The first one is actually Japanese, and it is Pokemon Stadium 1, but they call it Pocket Monsters Stadium. So I think I speak for everyone that's ever collected N64 when I say I wish they had done the plastic inserts for Australian PAL, European PAL and US games. They've aged a lot better, and even the plastic, this game is copyrighted 1995, 6 and 8, so more than 20 years old, like 25 years old at this point, and the plastic isn't brittle, it hasn't yellowed, I can still pinch it, it doesn't break, but yeah, I wish they had done this. But they also, which is really cool, they call them cassettes, which obviously cassettes means something different here. We have cassette tapes, but yeah, it's a nice condition. game. It almost looks like it's never been played, and then it's got the associated cards with it, with instructions and stuff, which is pretty cool. I picked that guy up off again off Facebook. We have a guy named Jordan who lives in Japan, and he'll ship things back to Australia for those of us who want to buy some things. And the games from Japan are really cheap because they just had so much more in bulk, and they look after their stuff too. So even stuff that's in, like, I'd call this average to good condition, you know, it was still only $10, maybe $15. So next up, my first box game is Diddy Kong Racing. I grew up playing this a lot on an emulator. I had really good fun. I think I actually played this before I ever played Mario Kart. And it's really good fun. I've got it in a box protector. I also got this box as part of the lot that the lady had, but I had to buy a game and manual to go with it. It is the million seller, or like player's choice version. But that's okay, that doesn't bother me, and it was pretty easy to find a matching cartridge to go with the million seller box. I also, from that same lot and that same lady, GoldenEye 007. A lot of people, I mean, everybody knows who James Bond is, even if you haven't watched any of the movies. Again, this is a million seller worldwide copy. This was one of the only games that was rated at MA15+ for the N64. It was pretty uncommon to have higher rated games. And this is considered one of the, I suppose, defining first-person shooters, especially because it was in 3D. But yeah, I've played a little bit of it. I grew up playing it on emulators as well, so because these are my only box copies, and they're in average condition, I'd give them like a 6 out of 10. There's not too much creasing and stuff. Maybe 7 out of 10, but I try not to open them too often because I don't want them to get damaged. So yeah, moving along, we've got my loose games, which is where the majority of my collection sits. So we'll go from A to Z. The first game is 1080 Snowboarding. So again, another great game. You'll hear me say that a lot. I really enjoy 1080 Snowboarding. I've also got 1080 Avalanche on the GameCube. I mean, it's just a snowboarding game. It's downhill snowboarding. It's good fun. It's got cool music, and I also have a manual to go with it. So this is a pretty good condition manual. It's a little bent, but otherwise it's nice and straight. There's no bulging of the pages or anything, and it is an Australian manual to go with the Australian cartridge. Next is Conker's Bad Fur Day. So one of the greatest games on the N64. This is a very expensive cartridge. I bought it over a year ago now, and I paid $220, I think, Australian for it, which is a lot of money to pay for a cartridge-only game. But it's a fantastic game. Again, it's M15+, so because there was a lot of not safe for work references in it, but it's a really enjoyable game. It's got a cool art style. It's good fun. I don't have a manual for this because it's very hard to find manual only, and I've come across, I think, 2 manuals, but they're about $100 each. I'm just not willing to pay quite that much just to have a manual. But box copies in Australia can go for about $400, $500 if they're in really nice condition. I think those numbers are just off the top of my head. They may have changed. But this was one of those games made by Rare, which, you know, before they were acquired by Microsoft in their golden years, in my opinion. Next we have Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Kazooie, again, fantastic game, made by Rare, really good fun. You play as Banjo, the bear, and you're rescuing his sister from Gruntilda, or Grunty, the evil witch. So a really good game, similar art style to Conker's, but much more safe for work. I'm not actually sure of the rating on this guy. It must either be G or PG. and I also have the manual to go with it. So this is an Australian cartridge and Australian manual, which is nice. Again, pretty good condition manual. I like to have, not having the boxes, it bothers me a little bit, but it's not a big deal. I prefer to just have the manuals because sometimes these games, if you didn't play them growing up and you're used to modern games, which tell you where to go and what to do a lot more than older games did, sometimes it can be handy. You get to a spot and you can't remember how to do a certain move, and you're like, how did I do that? So instead of having to look it up, sometimes it's really nice to flip through the pages of a manual and go that direction. Next, we have Banjo-Tooie. So Banjo-Tooie is, as the name suggests, it's the second Banjo-Kazooie game. So I don't have a manual for this one, unfortunately, and I think I paid about $80 for this cartridge. But again, really, really great game. Similar themes. I can't quite remember the story, it's been a while. But yeah, really good. Next is Donkey Kong 64. So Donkey Kong 64 was another Rare game. This is kind of a different cartridge because obviously it's yellow, so there wasn't many coloured cartridges made for the N64 set. But I think they're pretty cool. They stand out on the shelf. You always know, because they don't have end labels, you always know what you're grabbing when you grab this. I do also have a manual to go with it. It is an Australian manual, and this is a thicker manual compared to some of the others. Australian manuals only have English in them, as opposed to European manuals, which can have multiple languages in them. So, yeah. Okay, so next is Earthworm Jim 3D. So I grew up playing Earthworm Jim. It was one of the first games I ever played with my sister on the computer. Earthworm Jim 3D is the third and I believe the final game in the Earthworm Jim franchise. They took it from a side-scrolling 2D platformer to a 3D sort of, it's not open world, but, you know, more of an open world game. And this is a European copy. It's not that easy of a game to get because it wasn't a smash hit. There's not a ton of copies around, but I don't think it's super expensive. I, again, bought it a couple of years ago. I think for around $50 or $60 for the cartridge, and then it took me a while to find the manual, but I did eventually find one on eBay. Please excuse the glare. It's in a protective bag and I just left it in there, but you can see here this is a European cartridge, so I purchased a European manual, and you can see it comes in French, Spanish and Italian as well as English. So I said French. That's the British flag, excuse me. Yes, so sorry, it comes in English, Spanish and Italian. But yeah, it was made in 1999, so sort of not a little later in the N64's lifespan, but I think it's okay. It got a lot of hate because it came away from Earthworm Jim's original style, and while I still prefer the first two games and they're still some of my favourites, I still think this is a good game. Alright, next up is Excitebike 64. I really, really like Excitebike 64 in particular. I've got the NES Classics version of Excitebike on my GBA, which is good fun, but you can't really beat 64. Again, I played this a lot on an emulator as a child. I do have a manual for it, but the manual is in pretty rough condition. It's nice and straight. I flattened it under some heavy books, but you can see it's got a lot of crease wear in it. But that's okay. It was pretty cheap. I think I only paid $5 or $10 for it. And inside, it's fine. All the wear is just on the outside. In terms of condition, it's pretty good condition. It does have some sticker residue there from the store that I bought it. They put their stickers on the edge, but they don't actually always avoid the label, which I hate, which most collectors tend to really dislike, including me, because you can't actually get this off without really ruining the label, as far as I know. I've tried a couple of different methods. You can if you go really, really lightly, but it's not too sticky now, so it's not too big of a deal. I kind of just leave it and live with it. Okay. Next is N64. So I haven't actually played N64. It's Enter the Gecko is its sort of official name. But I bought it because it was recommended to me and I'd seen a few videos and it looked really cool. So, but this is a European copy, so I've got a European manual to go with it. As you can see, very, very thick. I don't know what languages this one comes in. That looks like Italian, and oh, that's really cool. I've just found whoever used to own this put a bunch of the notes and passwords in it, so that was pretty cool. I know these this is the first time I've ever seen it. It's really, really cool. These are not private passwords, they're for in-game combos. This is, you know, we all used to do this as kids. It's really, really fun, and it's so cool to see that this manual was, you know, it was loved. You know, and it's still in quite good condition. The writing in it is quite neat, so I would say perhaps it was a teenager or an adult that used it, but yeah, that's pretty damn cool. So, and if you actually go in and you look at the English part of it, the manual is only about, it's only 23 pages long, so that's just the English part. So the rest is all different languages. So, yeah, and then they've got credits in the back as well, which is pretty cool to see. So, one day I'll get around to playing that. I think it should be really good fun. Next up is Pokemon Puzzle League. This is a really, really nice condition copy. I would like to get this one in box, because one of my big first collecting goals was to get every Pokemon game basically ever made. And I bought this one as part of that. This cartridge is in really nice condition and it was a decent price. I think I paid maybe $30 for it off a local business. So I got this, and then they also had the manual listed separately, and it's in really nice condition too. They're both Australian coded. I also have this game on, I'm pretty sure it's the Game Boy Color. It comes on. So yeah, I haven't played the N64 version, but I have played it on the Game Boy. It seems like more of a sort of a handheld game to me. I don't know why I do that in my brain, but I do. Next is Pokemon Snap. So most people have heard of this game by now, especially seeing as it was remade. I think it was remade for the Switch just probably about a year or two ago now. The Switch version is great. This version's great. I'm pretty sure they're much the same. They're effectively an on-rail shooter, but instead of shooting bullets, you shoot pictures of Pokemon doing different things. Different moves or jumping up and down, and based on the pictures you get a score, which is, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a fun game design, and this did age pretty badly, so I was glad when they remade it. So I do also have the manual for this. Again, it's in pretty nice condition. Next, we have Pokemon Stadium. So, this manual I got off that lady that I also got the controllers off. She had this and the transfer pack, but not the game, or unfortunately the box. So I had to pick up a cartridge. This cartridge is in pretty good condition. You can see someone at some point has tried to get some sticker residue off, but luckily they didn't damage the manual. Sorry, they didn't damage the sticker too much. It's not aligned very squarely in the packet you can see there, but I'm fairly certain that this is a legitimate game. I've never had any questions about it. and it seems to boot and run just fine. So the manual's in pretty good condition as well. So yeah, again, it was part of the quest to have everything Pokemon. You can see, you probably can't really see, but I have a plushie corner there. It's all Pokemon plush, and then I've got Sleeping Eevee up there, and it's a small obsession of mine. Next up, Tonic Trouble. I bought this recently in a local pawn shop. I think I paid $30 for it. It just looked fun. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about it. I haven't looked it up a lot. Looking for a manual for it, but it's not that easy to find. There's a couple of manuals overseas, but they're outrageously expensive to get to Australia. So I do look forward to playing it. It looks like they look like evil tomatoes or something, and then you've got a carrot on there. Unfortunately, the label's not in the best condition. You can see there it's been worn by some sticker residue. But otherwise it's in pretty nice condition, so if it did release an Australian copy, I'd prefer to replace it with a nicer label. So next we have Wave Race 64, another great game. I enjoy sort of motocross games or snowboarding games. I don't play them for hours, but I think they're fun to always pick up and go back to. Wave Race was jet ski, just really good fun to play. I also have a manual for it, again in really nice condition, really nice and straight. Pretty good condition cartridge, some minor scrapes and bumps and things like that, but overall it's not too bad. And then last but certainly not least is Wipeout 64. So one of my favourite franchises is F-Zero. So I don't actually have F-Zero on the N64, but Wipeout reminded me a little bit of it, which is why I picked it out. It's really good fun. I like the high intensity, fast-paced racing games. And essentially where this one is, so you avoid crashing and damaging your ship, I guess. I think it is your ship. But yeah, so I think it's pretty cool. I haven't played too much of it. I also have the manual, again, which is in really nice condition, except for a small dog ear up there. This is a European manual again, so it's super duper thick, but it's pretty cool. You can see all the different tracks before you get into, before you go in to play it, all that sort of stuff. And that was the great thing about manuals back then, is you could, on the way home, or if you rented it or whatever, you could actually read how to play the game and do everything out of the manual, instead of the game having tutorials or telling you how to do it or having to Google it. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, that completes my N64 collection. It is one of my sort of smaller collections, but I like it. I think it's full of good fun stuff, but not necessarily the big hitters, and that's okay. I don't play my N64 as much as I'd like to. I tend to play sort of GameCube onwards, in terms of console generations, forward a little bit more. I think that's because that's sort of what I grew up with, GameCube, Wii era. So yeah, do you guys have any thoughts about the N64? Do you have big collections? Do you not collect for it? Yeah, feel free to leave a comment down below. Anything that you think I should get, any game recommendations. Yeah, otherwise have a really good day.